The Orioles opened this series against the Astros on Thursday night with a lifeless performance. The question was, how would they respond? Well, they responded with two of the biggest swings and two of the biggest wins of the year to secure a series split with Houston. I'll recap the final three games of the series coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, August 26th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the final three games of the four-game set in Baltimore this weekend between the O's and the Houston Astros, with the Orioles winning in dramatic fashion in Friday's game and Saturday's game before falling on Sunday, and all ended up with a series split in the four-game set between the two teams. I'll recap all the big moments, including the Santander Grand Slam, the Jackson Holliday pinch hit double, and some really good pitching performances from the O's as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Supply House. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. So we'll take a look at the final three games of this series. If you do want to hear a recap of game one of this series when the O's lost 6-0 to the Astros on Thursday night, you can go back and check out Friday's episode, and I would definitely recommend that episode. Maybe not as much for that game recap, because that game was one of the worst stinkers the Orioles have had this season. And that is what made what the Orioles did on Friday even more impressive. And that is where we will start with game two of this series on Friday night. Final score, Orioles 7 and the Houston Astros 5 to even this series at one game apiece. So we'll talk about what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to someone for all three of this game. So for Friday, we start with what went right, and that was the swing of the year. Not just for Anthony Santander, who's had an amazing season and is up to 38 home runs, but of any Oriole this season. The Orioles just did not have much at all going offensively through the first 7 innings on Friday. And credit to Hunter Brown, who went 6 innings and gave up 1 earned run. He's been incredible this year. Jeremy Pena basically gifted the O's a run in the second with an error, and then Colton Cowser hit a solo home run off Brown in the third. That was the Orioles scoring. They were down 4-2, then down 5-2, and they just couldn't get anything off Hunter Brown. The Astros go to the bullpen. Taylor Scott, a quick and easy 7th. And then they go bottom 8. Orioles down 5-2. The Astros bullpen has been really good this year. Brian Abreu has been great again. And he comes out of the pen, and it's just looking like it's going to go Abreu, Hader, and the Orioles are going to lose their second straight game to the Astros. And then we saw a little bit of Orioles magic. We got a Gunnar Henderson single. Adley Rutschman hit a ground ball that looked like off the bat it could have been a 4-6-3 double play, but it just sneaks by into center field. You cover the corners. And then you have the play that really swung the inning. Gunnar Henderson hits a hard ground ball back to the mound, and Brian Abreu makes an amazing, behind the back stab to field the ball. Now you're looking at that point in the game, and it's a lot to process as you're fielding that ball, but you're thinking about what's going on there. You've got first and third, nobody out. You're up 5-2 in the 8th. At the very least, you got to get one out on that play. So your first choice might be, okay, let me turn around, throw it to second, and try to turn a double play. We'll let the run score if it happens, and I'll clear the bases. Your second choice could be, okay, I will field it, maybe glance at third, and then I'll throw to first and make sure I get one out on this play. Way down the list in your third option would be go towards third base and try to get the out there. And Abreu thought he had Cowser hung up, but the throw was late. Great slide by Cowser. He gets in safely. And all of a sudden, instead of what could have been 2 outs, is now bases loaded, nobody out for Anthony Santander. And Santander, as I mentioned, the swing of the season. A 2-1 fastball that was out of the strike zone. Again, this pitch, not in the zone. This was maybe a half a foot or more above the zone that Santander went after, and he absolutely demolished this thing. into right field for a go-ahead grand slam. The yard was absolutely jumping. If you're watching on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, again, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. But you can see here, courtesy of Baseball Savant, the 4 pitches that Abreu threw to Santander in the grand slam at bat. He goes 2-1, and there you see pitch number 4. That is well above the strike zone. He takes it. It's ball 3. It's a 3-1 count with the bases loaded. Instead, Santander, a very, very good high fastball hitter, put a great swing on one and pulled it into the right field bleachers to put the O's up 6-5. I mean, the reaction from Santander was incredible. The crowd reaction, a huge crowd on Gunnar Henderson bobblehead night on a Friday night. Just everything about that swing felt like an Orioles team that has really been, you won't see crazy struggling, but they've basically been a 500 team for 2 months after playing 20 games above 500 baseball early in the year. And, it's not like they've gone on stretches where they're like 10-20 and have tanked their season, but it's been frustrating to watch. It's been frustrating for those Orioles players to be a part of. And that Santander swing, the O's got to take a lot of frustration on, not just Santander, but the rest of that team, and their reaction felt like the biggest win, the biggest swing of the season. Just amazing moment at Oriole Park. Now, what went wrong? That was Cade Povich, who didn't quite follow up his last great start. Povich, who kind of came up for a spot start last Saturday against the Red Sox and was great. 6 1/3, 2 runs, maybe the best start of his career. Then went back down, and then Zach Eflin went on the injured list, and the Orioles needed a starter again. And because it was an IL move, they could call Povich right back up to make the next start in the rotation. He gets the ball against the Astros on Friday night and just was not the same pitcher we saw the week before. 5 innings of 5-run ball for Povich on 8 hits, 3 Ks, 2 walks, and 2 home runs allowed on 84 pitches for the rookie left-hander. And, he just kind of let things get away from him in the 3rd inning of this game. He went 2 scoreless to open the game. The O's got him a 1-0 lead. And then Jose Altuve hit an opposite field 2-run homer on a changeup to make it a 2-1 game. I believe it was Altuve's only a 2nd home run against a changeup all season. So Povich played to the scouting report, just left it a little bit too high and over the plate, and Altuve just got it over the wall in right field. And then it seemed like Povich just couldn't respond to that in that inning, and it piled on, and the Astros ended up scoring 4 in the 3rd. And although Povich recovered and had a couple more solid innings, he just let things snowball. Then he let 3 straight hits up in the 6th and pitched into the 6th, but didn't record an out, allowed a 5th run, and came out of the game. And I like that he was still throwing strikes. That was good. But he kind of sprayed those strikes around the zone and didn't have good in-zone command, despite the fact that he only walked 2 batters, and the walks themselves have been the biggest issue for Povich throughout the season. He limited those, but some of his pitches that he was trying to throw for the corner leaked into the middle of the plate. And that's command that doesn't show up in the walk category, but shows up when you give up hits and give up runs. And quite frankly, for Povich, he's had his ups and downs this year. He's a rookie. What do you expect? He's still a wild card in this rotation, but you look around and, Trevor Rogers option to AAA, and you got Rodriguez and Eflin on the injured list among all those other guys that are injured. And it's just like, there's no better options. Like, among healthy guys right now, Cade Povich, I think, is maybe not super clearly, but I don't think you can really argue that he's one of the best 5 healthy starters that the O's have right now. So they're going to send him out there and kind of see what happens at this point. And it's going to be up and down. It was more the down, though, on Friday night. But the shout out for Friday goes to the relievers who have struggled a little bit over the last few days. And even some guys who, in Burch Smith's case, didn't have a fantastic outing later in the weekend, but 3 guys in Burch Smith, Craig Kimbrell, and Sir Anthony Dominguez, who combined to throw 4 scoreless innings out of the bullpen on Friday after Povich left after the 5+ innings. Burch Smith came in, did a great job, came in 2nd and 3rd, nobody out, got out of that jam without allowing another run to score, kept it a 5-2 game, then got himself a 1-2-3-7 to keep it 5-2. I mean, Smith recorded 6 outs on only 17 pitches. No strikeouts, 0 swings and misses, but hey, some soft contact, and you need outs, and he got outs. And Smith, his last outing before that was not very good. That was that 4-run blow-up outing Tuesday in New York against the Mets when the game was kind of in hand, and then he just fell apart and only recorded 1 out in the 8th inning. That was a great recovery from that. Then they go to Craig Kimbrell because, you're down 5-2 in the top of the 8th. Feels like a spot to maybe help Kimbrell try and get things right. And it wasn't perfect, but He got a couple of strikeouts. He did allow 2 hits, but he looked better. And he did something very, very different. I'm going to break this down in more depth tomorrow on the episode where we kind of discuss, okay, what should the Orioles do with Kimbrel right now? But he made a pitch mix change. Kimbrel threw 15 breaking balls. Now, to be fair, it took him 27 pitches to put up that 0 in the 8th. That's not great, but a 0 is a 0. 15 breaking balls, including 2 sweepers, not just the curveballs, for Craig Kimbrel. 15 breaking balls ties a career high for Kimbrel in any relief outing of his career. 15 breaking balls. That's a pitch mix change. And maybe it's something he can do more going forward. He commanded them well in the strike zone and had him start as a strike, go to a ball, and get swings and misses when he needed to as well. We're grasping at straws sometimes for Kimbrel, but that was a legitimate change that you could see, and it worked to put up that 0. And then once the O's put up the big 5 runs in the 8th inning, they go to Sir Anthony Dominguez. And listen, I think we were all in agreement that he was still the Orioles closer, even though in his last 2 outings, he allowed a walk-off homer on Monday and a walk-off homer on Wednesday against the Mets, but got the day off Thursday, right back out there Friday. And what does he do? How about a 1-2-3 top of the 9th to secure the save? Really good moments for all 3 of those guys to kind of get back on track a little bit. And the Orioles with, I still think, again, the win of the season to take it with that magical Santander Grand Slam on Friday night. But then the question was, how would they follow it up? Would they let it go to waste and continue to struggle, or would they come up with another big late win? And luckily, it was the latter for the Orioles on Saturday. But this time, it was the rookie phenom in Jackson Holliday who had the biggest swing. We'll recap Saturday's win coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. You can order supplies from the website that's made for the skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. Need help with an order? Get industry-leading after-sales service from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team and talk to a real person every time. And there's great news for plumbers, technicians, and contractors. Being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join their free TradeMaster program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 1,000 pros already trust the TradeMaster program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by the DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with the DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. The DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. And the DK Law Group is a women-led law firm with Diana Khan at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert. So contact the DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On Orioles listeners, you can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So the Orioles got what I think was the win of the season with the Santander Grand Slam on Friday night. But they followed it up with one that wasn't better, but you make a top 10 of Orioles wins this year. Certainly, you're putting Saturday's W in there as well. Final score from Saturday afternoon on Orioles Hall of Fame induction day. Congratulations to Dick Bowie, to Terry Crowley, and of course to Nick Markakis for being inducted into the Orioles Hall of Fame on Saturday. But the O's win it 3-2 over the Astros to take the first 2 of 3 in this series. And let's start with what went right on Saturday. And that was Albert Suarez just keeps on rolling for the Orioles. Since kind of making that emergency start and replacing Grayson Rodriguez in the rotation when he went down with the lat issue, Suarez had put up 3 consecutive scoreless starts, 17 2/3 consecutive scoreless innings in the last 3 starts. Now, He lost that streak to the very first batter because on the second pitch of the game, Jose Altuve took him deep into the left field seats to put the Astros up 1-0. Second time Altuve has taken Suarez deep to lead off a game this year. He did it to him in Houston earlier in the year when the Astros swept the O's in that series at Minute Maid Park. But Suarez did not let that get to him. He finishes the day 5 2/3, 2 runs on 4 hits, 3 Ks, 2 walks, and 2 home runs. Also gave up a solo home run to Jeremy Pena in the 6th inning, but that was really all the Astros had going against Suarez. And they did have a good chunk of hard hit balls, some harder contact than Suarez is used to, but he got 10 swings and misses. He was in the strike zone like usual. It was your solid 94 up to 97 with the fastball velocity. We saw the curve, we saw the cutter, and we saw the changeup. And that's the pitch I want to talk about the most. Now, it wasn't the highest changeup usage of the season for Suarez. I mean, he only threw it 14 times out of 91 pitches. It was his number 4 pitch, which it usually is, but we've seen it be number 3 or number 2 at times. But that thing was moving. He only threw 14 changeups. He got 9 swings. How about 5 swings and misses on 9 swings by Astros hitters against Suarez's changeup? Throwing it to lefties, throwing it to righties, getting it to fade down and away from left-handed hitters. It was really impressive to watch from Albert Suarez. And even the pitch he threw to Pena that was the second homer was not a bad pitch. It was just a great swing with big-time power from Jeremy Pena. He gave up a double in the 5th and got out of it quickly and a jam there. And he's just, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you about Albert Suarez. This is just a guy who's saving the Orioles pitching rotation. You can't say any more than that. He is saving the Orioles, and he's done it all season. Who would have thought that Albert Suarez would go out there and post a 3.18 ERA in the amount of innings and starts he's made this year? Just ridiculous what he's done. And it wasn't his best start of the year. Again, he didn't, miss a whole lot of bats with the strikeouts. He gave up some hard contact. He gave up a couple of long balls. But at the end of the day, Albert Suarez is the Orioles' clear-cut second best healthy starting pitcher. It goes Corbin Burnes and Albert Suarez right now. Yes, when they're healthy and back, Grayson Rodriguez and Zach Eflin certainly fall in above Suarez, and at times you can put Dean Kramer above him as well. But right now, if you had to start a playoff series right now, and you didn't have Eflin and you didn't have Rodriguez, I think I would start Albert Suarez in game 2 behind Corbin Burnes. Potentially, it's a wild card series. You lose game 1, season on the line. I'm throwing Albert Suarez out there. He doesn't get phased. He's risen to every challenge. I think even if Eflin and Rodriguez come back and the Orioles need him to, Suarez could rise to the challenge of a playoff spot. And maybe he changes that and struggles in September and we look at it differently, but just what he's doing is unbelievable. It's not getting talked about enough around Major League Baseball, and I get it. It's Albert Suarez. It's the Orioles, people see it as number 5 starter, swingman, but we know in Baltimore how much he has meant to. Where would they be without what Albert Suarez has done? It's just amazing every time he goes out there. What went wrong for the Orioles on Saturday? Well, the O's are dealing with some more injuries. It started on Thursday, actually. Ryan Mountcastle jamming his wrist, sliding into second on a double in Thursday's game. He ended up leaving the game. He didn't play Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Now, I was kind of looking around for a further update from Brandon Hyde. As of at least before the recording on Sunday, we didn't have a great update. And oh, there we go. I go and look, and we have one from 1 minute ago as I'm recording. Jacob Calvin-Meyer of the Baltimore Sun. Ryan Mountcastle, Brandon Hyde saying, was not available off the bench on Sunday. Hyde hopes they'll be healthy by Tuesday in LA. Of course, the Orioles have the off day today on Monday before taking on the Dodgers on Tuesday. So we shall see. Kind of jammed his wrist and was not available Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And that was tough for the O's because Saturday and Sunday with Valdez and Kikuchi, they faced 2 left-handed starters. And those are 2 games where they could use Mountcastle. He'd hit high in the order, and they just did not have him in those 2 games. They started Ryan O'Hearn against a lefty on Saturday, and then they started Emmanuel Rivera at first base on Sunday. So certainly missing Mountcastle. Now, he hasn't been great lately. He's got a 60 WRC plus in the month of August, and he hasn't homered in a while. He's not really pulling the ball. It's a different Mountcastle, and there's questions to be answered there. It's probably more of an off-season conversation, but they miss not having him. And then on Friday, they lose Cedric Mullins as well. He leaves Friday's game after striking out at the plate with left quad tightness. And Mullins, again, did not play Saturday or Sunday. Now, that one was a little bit more of a question mark because with the 2 lefties in there, Mullins most likely would not have started either of those games. Now, he could have certainly come off the bench, but we didn't see him Saturday or Sunday. And Hyde said the same thing about Mullins. he also was not available in the game Sunday, and he is also hoping he is ready for Tuesday. Now, these are not the two biggest producers in the Orioles lineup, certainly not in Mullins or Mountcastle. And they're two guys who, had their names floated at the trade deadline. There were questions about, how much longer will they be everyday pieces of this Orioles order. Mountcastle and Mullins certainly are not like truly everyday guys. Mullins not playing against lefties, and Mountcastle's really not playing against every righty anymore. But these injuries just kind of continue to pile up. And again, the hope is they get another day off Monday. They're both good to go. And maybe we see them both in the lineup Tuesday night in LA, and they're back helping this Orioles team. Mountcastle struggling a bit, but Mullins has been swinging the bat much better. We know how good he is in center field. But what if one or both of them had to go on the IL? It's possible. It could be backdated a little bit, which would lessen the time that they would have to actually miss. But you're out for 3+ games. You start thinking about, should we just put them on the IL? And how bad is this injury? Now, if Mountcastle went on the injured list, most likely there'd be two options, I would say, for the Orioles to go to. You'd probably either see Kobe Mayo come back because he could, DH and play some first base where Mountcastle would have been in and give you a big right-handed power hitter against lefties. It would all depend on how the Orioles feel about what he's done since going back to AAA and how that fits Mayo's timeline. And then the other option would be JD Davis, who's kind of been in AAA with the O's after signing a minor league deal. He plays third. He also plays first. He's a right-handed hitter. He could kind of help you in that sense as well. And then if Mullins had to go down, there's a couple options as well. Daniel Johnson would be an interesting one, also a left-handed hitting outfielder who's been having a sneaky, really, really good year in AAA. O's signed into a minor league deal. He was kind of became a star in spring training, but has been in Norfolk all season. He would be an interesting guy. And then maybe a guy like Nick Maton, who has been here for a day or two, could be back up. And also Levon Soto, who was up for a little bit last week, would be another option. But you listen to those options, none of them are crazy exciting. I mean, Kobe Mayo, the name is, but he struggled a bit in that first stint. And that really just paints the picture of what's going on with this O's team. It is so injured, and hopefully Mullins and Mountcastle can come back. But the shout out to Saturday's game, well, the shout out goes to Emmanuel Rivera, who was called up on Thursday, or at least activated to the roster Thursday after the Orioles had claimed him off waivers from the Marlins earlier in the week. Basically just replaced Levon Soto on the roster. Essentially just a better version of Soto. Plays a great third base, can play first base, right-handed hitter. Hasn't had a great offensive season or career. For a further breakdown on Rivera, talked about that on Friday's episode, so make sure and go check that one out. But with Mountcastle out, Rivera ended up getting the start on Saturday. Now, he hasn't been a great hitter in his career, but he has been much better against left-handed pitching. And with Framber Valdez, the lefty on the mound, Rivera started. And actually, Rivera started again on Sunday with Mountcastle still out, with the lefty Kikuchi out there, and drew 2 walks in that game Sunday, which was nice to see. But Saturday was kind of a perfect spot to get Rivera in there because you could tell Brandon Hyde wanted to give Jackson Holliday a day off. He was 0 for his last 20. And with a left-handed starter out there, it was kind of a perfect time to sit Holliday at least for the first part of the game. So they get Rivera in there at third base. You move Ramon Arias to second base for the game, and Rivera walks in his first plate appearance, and he strikes out in his second one against Valdez. And then the 6th inning happens. The Orioles have first and second with 2 down. They're trailing 2-0. Colton Cowser's at the plate. Framber Valdez is just rolling along. And Cowser hits a routine ground ball to first base. John Singleton over there for the Astros picks it up, should just trot to first base and step on the bag for the final out of the inning, get out of the jam. Except he took his time, and Colton Cowser did not. And with a full headfirst dive, barely beats the play for an infield single at first base. So it should have been end of the inning. Instead, it's bases loaded and 2 outs. And Valdez is at 104 pitches, and that was the lefty Cowser. And now it's the righty Rivera coming to the plate. Now, matchup-wise, you might think, okay, we want to get the righty into the game here to face Rivera. But you had to know what Brandon Hyde was going to do if they put a righty in. If you are Joe Espada, Astros manager, and also brother-in-law of Brandon Hyde, the two are very, very close, you had 2 options. One was you leave Valdez in, who was rolling, was at 104 pitches, near kind of the top of what he's thrown this year, but 104 pitches to face Emmanuel Rivera, a guy with a 61 WRC plus at the big league level this season. Or you bring in Taylor Scott, former Oriole, O's legend from 2019, who has just kind of turned his career around with a great season. He's got a 1.89 ERA. He's been really tough on righties, but knowing that Brandon Hyde is going to bring Jackson Holliday off the bench as a pinch hitter for Rivera. Now, if I'm managing a game, I would 100 times out of 100, even at 104 pitches, rather Valdez face Rivera, again, with kind of the game in the balance, bases loaded, 2 outs in a 2-0 game, much rather have Valdez face Emmanuel Rivera than, no offense to Taylor Scott, but Taylor Scott versus, the number one prospect in baseball in Jackson Holliday. And if Brandon Hyde made the move that Joe Espada made in that game, Orioles fans would have come for his head. Instead, it was Brandon Hyde who ran circles around Espada in that spot. Scott comes in, Holliday pinch hits, first pitch, change up over the plate. Holliday whacks it into the right center field. Great base running by Cowser, clears the bases, 3-run double, puts the Orioles up 3-2 in the sixth. And another huge swing, huge moment. Great for Holliday to snap the 0 for 20 and be ready to fire on the first pitch. Great move by Hyde there to put him into that spot and kind of bait Espada into bringing in the righty and then getting Holliday into the game. And I don't remember for some Orioles fans, does Brandon Hyde get credit for that win, or does he only get the blame when the Orioles lose? Does he get credit for making a good managerial decision? I guess that's for you all to decide, but just another huge swing. What a hustle inning by Colton Cowser. What a big swing. And then the Orioles bullpen just came in there and went boom, boom, boom. You saw some Keegan Aiken. You saw some Yennier Cano. You saw some Sir Anthony Dominguez, and the O's had a 3-2 win to win the next two in the series. So then they turned their attention to Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, trying to win the series over the Astros. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done. Recapping the final game of the series to finish off the pod coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel on this show. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. That's an amazing deal to get 3 weeks free of Sunday Ticket. You can't beat that. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. So after those amazing wins on Friday and Saturday, the O's had a chance to win the series over the first-place Astros on Sunday. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done as the O's fall 6-3 on Sunday Night Baseball to Houston and end up splitting the series 2 games apiece. And with these 4 games, the Orioles now 76-56 on the season. Hey, shout out to the Colorado Rockies. They went into Yankee Stadium and did really all we could ask them for. They won at least one game. They smacked the Yankees around to win it 9-2 on Saturday. Yankees, Aaron Judge kept hitting homers, so they won the other 2 games. But hey, shout out to the Rockies for at least winning one. The Orioles go into Monday trailing the Yankees by a game and a half in the AL East. But let's start with what went right on Sunday night. And that was another quality start from Dean Kremer. Listen, it wasn't the best you'll ever see Dean Kremer, but he did what the Orioles are asking him to do. 6 innings of 3-run ball on 7 hits for Dean, 5 Ks and 2 walks, no homers, 92 pitches for the Oriole right-hander. And that makes it 3 consecutive scoreless starts for Dean Kremer. He's allowed 5 earned runs in 18 innings in that stretch. His last 2 starts, 6 innings of 1-run ball. This one, just the 4th inning got away from him. He was efficient. He was amazing in the first 3 innings. He records the first 2 outs of the 4th in a 0-0 game. And then he just kind of lets it get away from him. He allows a single, then he allows an RBI double. And when it was all said and done, he allowed 5 consecutive hits in that 4th inning before escaping a jam. And the Astros put 3 runs against him in the top of the 4th, which was tough. He couldn't get that final out, but he then turned it around and he threw a good 5th and he threw a good 6th and he was efficient there as well. And, the O's tied the game up while he was doing that. And just, it wasn't a gigantic amount of swing and miss. It wasn't this super dominant start from Dean Kremer. It was only 5 whiffs. He threw a lot of fastballs. He also threw some splitters to righties that worked, which was good to see. He's starting to realize that is his best pitch and he's throwing it more and more. But Here's the thing with Kramer, and especially right now, they've got all these pitching injuries. You just need Dean Kramer to be the really solid and reliable version of Dean Kramer. We've seen it from time to time since he came to the bigs with the O's in 2020. We've seen spurts. We've seen spurts where he's been better and really good. We've seen spurts where he's been really, really bad. We just need the middle version, and that's what we've seen over the last 6 weeks or so from Dean Kramer. We've seen that middle version where he can just be a solid part of the back end of your rotation. And yes, he's kind of pushed into number 3 starter right now, but hopefully Eflin's back in a week, and then Grayson Rodriguez and Kramer can kind of settle in where he belongs as, the number 5 starter on a good team. Number 4 or 5 starter can just give you some good, solid innings and keep you in ball games. That's what Kramer did. Good start from Dean Kramer. Quality start from Dean Kramer. What went wrong? Well, that was those 2 out runs, those pesky 2 out runs on Sunday. Now, I mentioned the 5 straight hits, all coming with 2 outs and nobody on in the 4th for the Astros to score 3 runs against Kramer. But the ones that hurt even more came in the 7th. 3-3 game. Birch Smith comes in. He retires the first 2 batters of the inning in the 7th. And then he hangs a curveball to Alex Bregman, who just hits it over the wall in left field to go up 4-3. And then the very next pitch was a sweeper right down the middle. And Yainer Diaz hit one of the longest home runs I've ever seen. 455 feet to the back row of the splash zone to make it 5-3. They go back-to-back before Smith finally gets a strikeout of Pena to end the 7th inning. And the Astros got the 2 winning runs in the game with the back-to-back home runs in the 7th. And it's just kind of a weird thing for the Orioles and Birch Smith right now. Like, he now has an 8.71 ERA in 11 appearances out of the Oriole bullpen in the month of August. Now, he was much better in July when he first came to the O's, and he's just a guy who has good stuff out of the bullpen, solid breaking stuff, a fastball, 97. He threw it 99 to strike out Pena to end that 7th inning. But he's just really inconsistent. Like, he'll have some dominant outings, then he'll have some outings where the long ball beats him and he looks like that. And it's kind of been back and forth with good outing, bad outing since the Orioles got him. And the good stuff with inconsistency, that's like your perfect description of, you have an 8-man bullpen of like your number 6 or number 7 man reliever. Like, sometimes he can give you a really good 6th inning, and sometimes he'll come in the 7th when you're down 3, and all of a sudden you'll be down by 5 or 6 because he just didn't have it that day. That's the 6th or 7th guy in a good bullpen. Unfortunately, with the injuries and the ineffectiveness in this Oriole bullpen, Birch Smith, basically since he's been signed, has been kind of the number 3 or number 4 guy in this Oriole bullpen. Like, right now, clearly Dominguez and Cano are ahead of him. I mean, you can maybe argue Cionel Perez is ahead of him in the pecking order, but with Sir Anthony Dominguez unavailable, he pitched too much lately. He was not going to throw Sunday, and the O's could have thrown Cano, probably, but your top 3 guys were Cano, Perez, and Birch Smith in this game. So, Kramer leaves after 6. You're going to have to use, you would think, Birch Smith at some point. And I mean, you're really going to argue, I don't really think Kimbrel was probably available. You're really going to argue you want to put in Matt Bowman in his second Oriole appearance, or put in Gregory Soto the way he has looked in one of these spots there. I don't think so. So this is where the O's bullpen is kind of at right now. It's Birch Smith in somewhat high leverage, and he's come through big sometimes, like he did on Friday night, and other times, like he did Sunday, he just has not. He is basically throwing in the Jacob Webb role right now because Webb was so good all season, and now he's injured, and we don't even know if Jacob Webb is going to be back at any point this year. So maybe Webb can come back and take those innings back. Maybe someone like Matt Bowman, who did throw a scoreless 9th, and he's got 2 scoreless appearances as an Oriole since they added him on Thursday. Maybe someone like Colin Selby, who was really good and went down to AAA, but I guarantee if he's healthy, he'll be back in September in this bullpen. Maybe he can take some of these innings, or maybe Birch Smith can get more consistent. Any of those things could happen, but it's just tough. The spot you're in, it's like Brandon Hyde threw Birch Smith in the 7th, and you look at all the righties coming up, and you look at the state of the bullpen, and you're like, that was the right guy to put in. He just didn't get it done, and it stinks that Birch Smith is the right guy to put in that spot. That's the state of the bullpen. That is what is unfortunate right now. Now, the good part was those 2 homers allowed by Smith, those are the only 2 earned runs allowed by the Orioles bullpen in this entire 4-game series. 13 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs by the Oriole bullpen. That is a really, really good sign for this team in this series. I know it didn't close out great with the bullpen giving it up on Sunday, but that is a great sign for a bullpen that is really, really struggling. And speaking of the bullpen, the shout out for Sunday's loss goes to Cionel Perez. Now, on the mound, he didn't have an amazing outing. He allowed an unearned run in the 8th, got hurt by a Ramon Arias error, got out of a jam. But he made a highlight play in another way, and that was on Arias's game-tying 3-run homer in the 5th. Off of Yusei Kikuchi, hit a ball into the bullpen, 3-run shot to tie it at 3 on a high fastball. He went up and got it out of the zone and deposited it into left. And who was waiting there in the Oriole bullpen to catch it? But none other than Cionel Perez to catch it with his hat. And I believe that is the 6th time this season that Cionel Perez has caught a home run in the bullpen with his hat. That is absurd. And, I'd much rather Perez be a dominant 8th inning guy rather than a dominant home run catcher with his hat. But he's still been solid for the O's bullpen this year. And it's just amazing. And obviously it's awesome to see Ramon Arias have another big swing for this O's team, have a 797 OPS in August after Arias posted a 940 OPS in July. All this with Jordan Westburg being out and the O's needing some production over at third base, with it basically being Arias' everyday job now until Westburg gets back. But you know what? Some things outside of winning and losing are really cool too. And Cionel Perez continuing to catch home runs in his hat in the bullpen, whether it's a win or a loss in the game, it's honestly pretty cool. And I just wanted to shout him out for doing that, because I don't think I've really talked about it much or even at all in the podcast this year, but cool stuff like that happens. Yeah. Shout out to Cionel Perez. Seems like a good guy. The guys like to be around him, and he's been at least a solid part of this Orioles bullpen for the last 3 years. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. Episode's already been pre-recorded because of some scheduling stuff. So if there is some big Orioles news, like, for example, Samuel Basallo promoted to AAA on Sunday. Not really talking about that on tomorrow's episode, but we could get to it later in the week. But we're going to talk about the Craig Kimbrell issue. He's been a little bit better recently, but it is still a problem for this Orioles bullpen. So coming up on tomorrow's episode, what could and what should the Orioles do about Craig Kimbrell down the stretch? That's coming up tomorrow. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.